And we are live. Hi, everybody. My name is Corruption Points, and joining me, as always, is the fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yo.
And today, we are joining you for this very special Table Talks. This is special, and Fox, I'll let you announce why.
Yeah, it's gonna be my last episode.
What?
I got other Dicetroop duties to get to, like the website and After Dark to do cross promotions and all that stuff, and got some pretty exciting things planned up. You got your adventure show.
I do. And that's actually well on the way, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, it's and then it's kind of funny because with the people I've been talking to, like, what's next after Dark? I'm like, oh, I'll probably throw you towards the Corruption Points adventure show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which I don't mind. So today, because it's Fox's very last show, we thought we'd have a very special show of which we talk about our favorite tabletop experiences. And for that, I'll lead off with you, Fox. What has been your favorite tabletop character?
Oh man, I gotta say, my favorite character was a dwarf ranger I had in high school. His name was Brothor's Badbeard. I love that name so much, but essentially I somewhat loosely based him off of Joseph Bugman. He was his dwarf, his family. They had like one of the top beers in in the world and stuff like that. And basically, what happened is he was an apprentice to his father, to his uncles and stuff like that. And basically, the brewery got destroyed in a horrid orc accident. At some point in time before he actually got the recipe. However, he does very specifically remember what it tastes like. So basically, his whole thing is he goes around with a giant keg, like, roped to his back, and he just basically goes around the wilds, like, just putting random shit to try to make beer and stuff like that. And the GM was totally cool. Like, he's like, man, I really like that backstory. So I would make my what is it in D&D? Is it nature lore?
Usually,
survival?
yeah.
Or survival. But he would make me have those checks, and I'm like, oh yeah, you can scavenge these, and these. And, I'd check it, and I'd put in beer, and sometimes it would do, terrible things, like it would give the party diarrhea, and then sometimes it might, it might heal wounds. It might give us, like, extra, like, stat bonuses, like higher constitution, lower intelligence, stuff like that. So that was just a lot of fun, just kind of doing all that extra stuff, and he did ultimately have that goal, as well as, just being a cool dude who just goes around on adventures and stuff like that.
In that sense, I played a fighter almost every single time I've played D&D because I'm pretty boring. But I really like that bread and butter class. And while all of my fighters have been more or less the same person, it's something that I've always liked is a fighter that's all defensive but has a really, really big sword. So I would take a full defense fighter, I'll like max out his AC, and I'd take combat expertise so I can get that bonus to AC, and then I'd have him like roaming around with a giant claymore. And it makes no sense, like why wouldn't I just go with weapon and shield, but I like the fluff behind thinking that the offense is the best defense while being defensive. And there's that aspect to the things you can do in D&D that are very, very silly, and allowing your players to be very, very silly and be their own thing while they play. To loop this around into a more broadening topic, Fox will bring you back in for this. What do you think makes a character your favorite, right? Is it the experience that you have at the table? Is it the experience you have just with them? Or is it the creation side? What do you think is the ingredients for making a character that's going to last as a player?
Well, first off, I would like to point out that my character's name is incorrect. Broforce Badbeard is just, like, way cooler. But, no, I mean, I've always liked the idea of dwarves. I very much switched to empathizing with the elves, the horny-eared bastards. But for the longest time, I was a huge dwarf fan. I just really like the idea of these, like, stubborn, grumpy people that live underground, and they're also very, very proper artisans and stuff like that. And I think that's already a great thing for a character building and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, something that was so cherished in his family for generations, and it's gone, and literally it's his mission to try and fix it. So I have to say the quest was half the journey, because there's so much you can do when you make a character just to kind of fit into a campaign, but when a character has an overall arcing story to the point where they can literally jump in and out of anything, I think that makes a character a bit more fun to play, a bit more unique. You know what I mean? Because I think when a lot of people play a campaign, they really only think of why they would be there at that one particular thing, and not necessarily what they're going to be doing after, or what they did, before.
No, yeah, I agree. It's very much self-contained always. You know what I mean? And when you have, I always see Dungeons and Dragons, and specifically Dungeons and Dragons, because that's what we're talking about right now, as a coming of age story, right? So every Dungeons and Dragons campaign is always a coming of age story. You start at level 1, you get to level 20 or 30 if you're doing 4th edition, and you go through your path, right? You start off with something that you want to do, and you get there by level 30. And I like that. I like that concept. It's having a backstory is very, very cool, because it's something that can always come up, something that can really come back at level 10, come back at level 20, and back and back and back. And then as you get your first 10 levels out of the way, and you're doing 11 to 20, you get to start using levels 1 through 10 as your backstory. And I've always enjoyed that. This is your life as a character. You know what I mean? Like, your backstory is levels 1 through 10. And then levels 11 through 20 is how you've reacted to the world so far and how you're going to make it better or worse, depending on which character you're playing. But I think there's something to be said about that. Would you say that a character where you get to grow up with them is easily more easy to become attached to?
Oh, definitely, definitely. In fact, the same GM or DM, I should call it, since we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons at this point. The one who ran the campaigns when I wasn't DMing, he actually made a campaign for one of the grand campaigns I wasn't a part of, where you actually played as your characters as kids.
Wow. Okay.
Like you wanted to be a dwarf, you were a 10-year-old dwarf. You wanted to be a human, you're an 8-year-old human, and it was their whole growing up story. And he legit played like the main sectors of their lives until they actually became warrior characters, which is pretty funny, because I remember there was one time they got in trouble or something, and the guards came or whatever, and they stole a key or something like that, and the dwarf player's like, "Oh, give me the key," and then he swallows it. We'll get it back. Don't worry.
Within that, I had when I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, just recently 4th edition with all my new players. I have a guy who's always trying to make his backstory this epic, grand, first I was a pirate, and then I enslaved everyone in Athos, because that's Dark Sun, and then when I had everyone enslaved, one of them got away, so I killed all the rest of the slaves, and I was like, dude, slow down, right? Be a pirate, and have slaving be your secondary thing, and then killing this guy have be your quest, your thing that you want to do. I think that there's something that to be said about growing up with characters, right? And it gives you that attachment. It gives you that that feeling that this thing that you're doing as this character is not just objective, done, we did it, goodbye. It's growing up as a character. It's growing up with yourself as a character, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, how often do your PCs usually do that? I mean,
go off the rails, or
yeah, kind of go off. Not, well, I don't know, because I mean, I honestly love it when my PCs just hand me a book, and they're just yeah, this is kind of what I had in mind for a character, and I'll go through and I'll read all of it. I'll listen to anything they have to say, because I really like having extra stories and stuff like that, because I believe we talked this on a previous episode. We always like to have that one session in a campaign where one player gets to shine.
Yes. Yep.
It's easier to get them shine. It's you can do it more consistently if they have a background and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree. I actually, again, coming back to my 4th edition campaign, I actually have one of the players. She's a novel writer as profession, so she wrote her backstory, which turned into a novella. It's 57 pages. Right, and I'm reading through it, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, but I have nothing else to say now. You've done all the coolest things. She murdered her whole family, and she traveled the world for ages, and she has all these assassins guilds, and I'm like, this is excellent and well written, but I don't know what to do now. So I keep trying to think of new things. Is there a disconnect between the attachment that you have to a character and the amount of things you can do with that character thereafter? Or does the attachment you have to a character start and end with where you start?
Oh man, I guess the example I would think of. Oh man, I don't know if you can hear that, but they're doing some really loud work out there. But I apologize if that's annoying. But no, I mean it's kind of funny, and again I'll kind of poke fun at Brett, because he just started role playing for the first time. That he had this really in-depth idea about his character. And he's like, yeah, my character's gonna be like this. He's gonna do this, and then within 5 minutes of us actually starting the role play, he changed his characters completely. Like he really wanted to be like a greedy, like douchebaggy dwarf, and then like, of course, like the first two people he meets are like the nicest people, and he's like, I don't want to be a dick anymore. I can't do this.
All right, so allow me to segue into something else with that then. Is there a point where your characters become your favorite because of how much they've grown, right?
Oh, absolutely.
For example, right now, not even taking Brett's example, but taking an example in general. You have a character who starts off as chaotic evil, right? And then near the end, they become chaotic good or chaotic neutral, right? Let's say after 5, 6, 18 weeks. Is there a certain amount of attachment that comes with realizing that you don't have to be a jerk all the time? Or is it the same regardless of that sort of evolution?
You know, it's. Do you have something in mind for this? Because I need a moment to think about that.
Sure, yeah. So it's very much. I have a character who he was a monk, right? And he started off as this lawful good monk, and he wanted to do the right thing, and he wanted to just constantly be great. And then he found a demon sword, right? And I was like, all right, you have this demonic sword now. It's going to be on your waist, and you're going to start thinking about whether or not you want to kill everybody with it. And he's like, no, I would never. I'm a lawful good monk, blah blah blah. And I was like, okay, cool. So it would very much be like corruption in Warhammer 40k, where it sort of starts feeding in. Like that sword really wants the blood. Like you met the last minotaur of this world, right? That sword really wants to kill that minotaur because then there'll be none left. And you're like, lawful good though, right? And so like time went on, and he went from lawful good to lawful neutral, right? Which I thought was like super big, right? You have this monk who's like all about being good, and then he drifted away from that into lawful neutral. So I asked him in the end, I was like, so how do you feel about your character now? And he was like, I like the fact that I'm real. And I think that's the point of making a favorite character. I think it's not playing a character that like cut and paste, all the rules behind. It's about making something that is real, that is organic, that you grow up with, as a person.
Yep,
and in that, it'll throw it back to you.
Yep. To relate to that to what I'm doing with my current tabletop project, anyone can build an army. Like anyone can just go out buy a battalion box, buy a character, and this is the character. I know the rules. I'm going to play this because I think it's cool. But then there's also people like Brett and I, where recently I broke my oath of playing only armies in the starter box to get some Eldar, and one of the things we're going to do is we're not going to build armies. We're going to build entire civilizations. So I'm going to buy I'm going to have like 1,000 guardians, and I'm going to have all the aspect shrines that I believe would exist in my craft world, and I definitely think there's definitely more of an attachment to that. And I mean, again, it's totally different, but thinking to yourself, if one of those people dies, you're like, wow, that's not just a soldier dead in my army, that's like a dude, that's my population reducing. And it's kind of similar, yeah, to something like role playing, or say like watching Game of Thrones, because obviously people have their favorite characters, and when the bad things happen to the characters they don't like, they're happy, but when good things happen, it's a bit more devastating. So yeah, I mean, definitely it's, to an extent, I think people that relate to their characters put a bit more effort into it. There are the people that can, I wonder if this is appropriate to say, because there's two kind of actors in the world. There's classical, and then there's methodical. And I don't know, are you familiar with that?
I am.
All right, so yeah, I mean, would you agree that there are some methodical role players and then there are some classical role players?
Yes, absolutely. So method acting is what we're talking about here, which is getting into the shoes, right?
Right.
Of your character, and then classical role playing in the sense of just be knowing that what your character is and constantly doing the same thing, knowing the archetype and going after it. Am I correct in defining it that way?
Yes, close enough.
So, for the audience, so the idea behind that would be characters that get into their own shoes and they get into their own head become a better character, right? Because they better understand what they're supposed to be doing, and they understand the motivations, the feelings behind actions, things like that, which is better than knowing the archetype. Whereas, like, I'm a fighter, therefore I fight. I fight for good. Done. Whereas if you're a method actor, you really understand, well, why the motivations behind fighting is, and things like that. And I've said this before, actually. If you have players that don't seem to care about anything, evil players, or neutral players, or players that just don't seem to be attached to the game, they have to be caring about something. And if something is themselves, they have to care about themselves. And that's something you can always take away. And that comes down to the difference between playing a character and playing a game, right? You can come to a table and just roll dice all day, or you can come to a table and be a character. And that
Yeah.
sounds sort of lofty and pretentious, but it comes true.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point in time, all of us nerds just sit down, we look at a rule book and we're like, in reality, if I lived in this setting, what would I do? Like, you know what I mean? I definitely would be a wizard of some sort just because I detest physical violence. I love learning. I love knowledge, so, I would be a spellcaster. And, if I really, really wanted to make a character who's related to me, I'd probably be like a true neutral wizard of some sort. I mean, do you just sit down and you're like, man, I think I'd be a monk?
I've taken the quizzes and I've done the stuff, and it always puts me as like a neutral elf wizard, and I'm like, that's not me. I'm not a neutral elf wizard. But then after playing World of Darkness as myself, I realized that I am incredibly jack of all trades, which is both hilarious
Neutral
and rather
elf
neutral.
wizard.
It was a neutral elf wizard actually, so it's pretty funny. In that, right? The idea behind role playing versus role playing with an L, RLL playing, is important for making something your own. And I'll bring a story into this actually. I'm playing Mutants and Masterminds right now. Mutants and Masterminds being the superhero game, and I have a player who showed up to 2 of 8 sessions, 2 of 8. And every week he seems to have a different excuse as to why he can't come. But the 2 sessions that he's showed up, he's like he's this girl who's a college professor, and she's very young, and she's got this amulet that's fueled by Egyptian gods, and she allows her to use magical powers. Pretty cool character concepts, right? From on paper.
Right.
But this guy is kind of an idiot, so he's constantly saying things that are like way out of character, and he's doing things that don't make any sense. And he's like, "All right, I'm gonna use one of my magical powers. How do I use them?" And we're like, "Well, it's Mutants and Masterminds. So why don't you summon like a giant mummy to like pick up a rock and throw it?" And he's like, "Eh." And then he like looks up Egyptian gods for the next 20 minutes and then decides on nothing. It's that kind of player. That kind of player is what I mean by role playing with an L, right? You come to the table just because you feel like you have to, and you're supposed to, and these are the people who are counting on you to come. But you don't really care about your character, what you're doing. You don't understand the rules. You don't really have any respect for your peers or the GM in the way that you don't play the game. Whereas anyone that actually cared about their character and actually thought about the character concept could make 1,001 ideas out of being an Egyptian-powered female in modern day. That's awesome. Like I'm already thinking of 1,000 different things to do.
Yeah. I'm thinking dropping the Nile on my foes.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like if you're an Egyptian archaeologist as a professor, and then you have this magical amulet, what are you doing? Why aren't you being awesome right now? So it's very, very sad. And in that, I think that making a favorite character comes from being excellent. Understanding your character and being fun, having fun with it. Those are the characters that we have the best times with, in my experience.
Yeah, and definitely just to sound super cheesy, it's like I think everyone usually sees a little bit of their characters in themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And very often I'll play characters that are dichotomically different than I am, right? They're parallels to my life. Often I play a female, just because I enjoy that character. I enjoy those characters' stories. I want to tell their stories. And it has nothing to do with me. But then when I'm playing D&D and I'm playing a fighter, I just want to be a guy with a big sword, because I'm not a guy with a big sword, and I never will be. It's that idea. It's that idea of making characters that you're going to enjoy. And those enjoyed characters will be the ones that you carry with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually kind of funny. Going into a bit of personal stuff here. I'm reading the Path series, which is the Eldar trilogy for Warhammer 40,000, and one of the characters who I really, really like, his whole thing is, he, for those of you who don't know, wow, I almost did my out of character thing, but for those of you who don't know, like the Eldar, they kind of like they focus on a career and they basically go with it until they just are not going to do that anymore, and then they do something else because they need to keep their minds focused on something. So the main character is like an artist or whatever, and then like eventually, he has just so much anger and so much angst because of a love triangle that comes up between them, and eventually he joins the Striking Scorpions, and he becomes this total badass warrior from a dude who was just like molding clay to now being a badass. And I was just kind of reading that, I'm like, maybe that I should use this as an excuse to be more elfy. So last week I actually started doing yoga and stuff like that, because I really like the idea of just, I'm like, man, I do have all of these I have stresses in life and stuff like that. I'm going to try yoga. It seemed to work for this guy quite well, so I'm going to be Elfie and I'm going to start being yoga. And I guess you could say that's trying to make my Elfie transition more complete.
Well, yeah, no, I was playing Pathfinder for the only time I've ever played Pathfinder, and I was playing as a circus. I was I was an elf who was convinced I was a human, because everyone told me I was a human. And I was playing a circus acrobat rogue, right? So I would throw knives, and throwing knives and being in the circus is something I have slight idea upon. But I decided to do a little bit more research, and in that I got to know like all these different techniques and all these different like stage presences, and it was really really awesome. And I got super duper into that character. I got to play him for like 3 sessions total, maybe 4 if I really stretch it. And like he's still like in the top of my list. I'm like characters I absolutely love, because I got into it. And it taught me stuff. I got to really be that guy. It was really, really fun. Although I was an elf and not a human.
I think after the show, you should wait a couple days, go back to this recording. You're like, man, maybe I should have gone to acting school.
Well, we can come into that after the show. But all of that is various things that make your characters your favorite. So within that, right? Do you think that having a favorite character is relies upon or heavily relies upon the campaign that you're playing in? Allow me to rephrase. Do you think it's possible to have a favorite character in a campaign that you don't enjoy?
No.
Okay. And why?
Well, I don't know. It depends, because there have been times where I've had to kind of all right. So I guess I should go back and revert back. I still think it's the players that make campaigns and stuff like that. The GM can write, a setting. They can say, you walk into a bar and chaos ensues, blah blah blah. The people, on one side, the players could just, kill and walk away. But then it's just like, well, one person's gonna fight, the other people are gonna like loot the liquor and stuff like that, and then they're gonna like go to the back, leave the door unlocked, so. And the chaos, maybe the innkeeper will forget to lock the door, then we can go in and steal stuff, I think it's more based on the characters. Stories are very character-driven, and as much as we give ourselves credit for writing the stories, it's really our players that, fill in the blanks. It's basically a giant game of Mad Libs.
Yeah, I don't particularly think that we write the stories, to be honest with you. I think that this hobby specifically is one where the collaborative storytelling is at the forefront. I don't think I've ever been able to just tell a story in tabletop. I think it all has to do with how my players interact with it and the things that they give back to me. I very much try to adhere to a theme, right? Like family or adventure, or something very, very broad, very general. But when it comes to the specific events and things like that, the best stories I've ever told are the stories that they told me. And in that, I don't think that... so I guess I agree with you in my own question. I don't think you can enjoy a character if you don't enjoy the setting.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, it could also... But then you got to define the term bad in that sense, I guess, as well, just because it's like, is it bad because you lost, or is it bad because you're not having fun? And if you're not having fun, yeah, it's impossible to have a favorite character, but if it's just bad because bad things are happening, you know what I mean? Like, it's a really depressing Game of Thrones type setting.
Oh, unenjoyable, right? You can enjoy being sad.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed dying. I have killed the crap out of characters, be like, oh, yeah, oh, like it.
Like hypothetical Dragon Age Origins.
Like hypothetical Dragon Age Origins, my character hypothetically died. It's while I didn't enjoy that session, but the idea rings true, right? Not all death is sad, right? And not all death is worthless or meaningless. Some death is poignant, and some death is heroic, And so being a bad situation where your character dies, it doesn't particularly mean it's a bad game. It might be the best story ever told because your character died, and that's something that's important to shine through.
Yep. Yeah. And if you guys are curious, Berthorus did eventually retire. He never actually figured out what his family's recipe is, but he's okay with it because he became friends with the King of the Ravens, and they just get drunk in a forest, pretty much. And they basically act as road wardens.
It's in that, right? I think those settings, the ones where I think it's a combination of things that makes a favorite character, and I don't know if you'll agree, but it's having first a character that you really enjoy and have thought about, and second a character you enjoy playing for a period of time, and third a campaign you enjoy playing them in.
Right.
I think that's what makes a favorite. I think those are the ingredients you need to make a favorite character. And in that, I don't think it's a template because it's kind of impossible to fit those subjective things into a
Oh,
template.
definitely.
But
It,
I think that if we're going to sort of try and talk about the science behind making a favorite character, that would be the formula.
mhm, definitely. And I think it's the characters you kind of don't really expect to be your favorites.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead.
Considering how many games we actually willingly just pick up and play, we never go in being like, man, this guy's gonna be my favorite character. Like, oh, this is character 963,942. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was playing Exalted, I played Exalted for a very long time as a Solar, which is more or less a Chosen of the Sun. If I can sum that up in the most incredibly small way possible, he's like Superman's sun hero. And I played him for like 15 straight weeks, and like every week I was like, this is cool, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like top tier status. And then like a week after, we decided to take a small break from that campaign, and I got to play an Abyssal, right, which is the Chosen of Death, more or less, like a Death Knight. And I was like, oh my god, this is the coolest character I've ever played, and like I never wanted to stop playing that character, and it went on, and although it was like this 3-shot, it wasn't really even a campaign we're ever gonna do again. I just love that character, and I think there's something to be said about that. It's the characters you don't really expect to jump out at you that just sort of grab your attention and take hold. Which is, well, there's something that only this format can do, something that only this medium can do. That's why I love tabletop. I guess is where I'm eventually going with this.
We're talking about the tables.
If I can, the point I'm so laboriously trying to reach is that this is the kind of system, this is the kind of medium that where we as players are allowed to be ourselves and also be someone else at the same time. And we get to make our own stories while being told the story, and we get to have our favorites while being in a favorite situation with our friends. And in that, I think that there's a much better way to make these experiences our favorite than any other medium.
Definitely, man. You sometimes say things I'm like, you should just write inspirational, like make inspirational videos.
I'll just put a cat hanging from a tree and put that underneath.
That's terrible, but it probably wouldn't work.
Right, yeah. But no,
I'd probably be like, man, I'm feeling good about that.
I guess that's we're coming right up on 30 minutes. That's where I'd like to end it. Fox, is there anything else you'd like to add about why you enjoy tabletop?
Just it's a social thing, man. I mean, I complain all the time about how if you go on to Dicetroop After Dark, if you guys haven't watched Dicetroop After Dark, for the love of God, go watch Dicetroop After Dark. It's so fun. I haven't had that much fun doing a show since I think like the first episode like of Tabletalks when we're all excited and it's new and it's fresh, but it's really really good. But it's social, and the fact of the matter is I think video games are really staying away from sitting on a couch and playing a game with your bros. You know what I mean? It's pretty much not going to exist anymore, I don't think, or it's going to be dying more rapidly. So it's the medium, and you put more effort into it than putting a cartridge into a system or putting a CD into a disc tray. You have so much more to show about it, you have so much more to talk about, and it's all about being social. I think that's why I really like it. It's all about just hanging out and having a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And I've said this before. People often attribute tabletopping to a bunch of dudes like sitting in the basement, no lights, snacks everywhere, antisocial, things like that. And I just don't understand. I've never been in a more social situation than when I'm writing a story with my friends.
Right.
where I am equal parts with them. And for the most part, it's not even ever all dudes. I almost always have a female in my group, and I love their company. I love everyone that can come to my table. And it's very much, I would like to break away from the stereotype that we have as tabletop nerds, where like everyone's all smelly and fat and have neck beards. When onto this actual reality of it, it's this great experience you can enjoy with your friends, and it's social and it's happy, and you get to do all these great things that last you forever. You teaches you things about yourself, and I love video games. I really, really do. Video games are my profession. They're the career I'm going for, and it's very much. I don't think it's the same experience. I don't think it can be reproduced.
All right, and then I have a couple of Dicetroop announcements. So yeah, I will be on Lore Keepers this Thursday on the 4th, which is 4th of July, so tune into the YouTube one, because chances are you'll probably be at a cookout. But I'll be doing that with Brett and Seb. We're going to talk about Warhammer Fantasy. I'm going to do a brief history of the world type thing. So that's going to be fun. Dicetroop After Dark, Friday, or technically Saturday morning at 1 a.m. We possibly have a special guest, a really, really talented cosplayer from Canada. We're going to be talking about role-playing games and just overall what's the whole connection between tabletop and video games and stuff like that. So, CP Army, you should check it out.
On my side, the Crushing Points adventure game is now in full flow. I have the technology and the hardware set up. I just got to get my people in order, of which we're going to put our first show, I'm hoping, within 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that. I will be on Lore Keepers in 2 weeks on July 11th. That will be about, as far as I understand, Gods and Forgotten Realms, which I have done far too much prep for, so we'll have fun with that. I'm sure I'll be talking to Seb about that later. As well as next week, Fox unfortunately will not be around, but I'll be having Rashiko from Tumblr. If you've seen him all over my blog and all over his, he'll be joining me for the idea behind sandboxing and open world games, and we'll be talking about it next week on Tabletalks.
Yeah, sounds good. So do you want to give the Dicetroop pitch?
Dicetroop is a non-profit organization. We will always provide these videos for free. However, we do take donations on the Dicetroop main page. If you would like to donate any money that you can, that'd be very nice. These shows are officially not costing Fox any money. Again, we will absolutely always provide these for free, but any help you can give us is great. Also, my Tumblr is crushingpoints.tumblr.com, and this is foxhammer.tumblr.com. If you'd like to annoy him with any of your questions, or me with any of mine, absolutely come and send us any messages you'd like.
Excuse me, I need to get these tissues. I'm so proud of you. Is it bad I actually kept that box handy just in case?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for coming as always.
Yep.
And I'll see you next week.
Yes. Take care.